This is our new read aloud for this week. This is called Real Kids, Real Stories, Real Challenges. Not real change, but real challenges. Overcoming adversity. If you want to look up the word adversity, use your Merriam-Webster dictionary on my.cfisd to find out the definition. The first story we're going to read is Mic Drop, Soosan Firooz. In Afghanistan, men sometimes describe women with the term nakis-ul-akil. It means something like not too smart and a little crazy. It's as if they're saying, oh, her? Don't take her seriously. She's nakis-ul-akil. The phrase is also the title of a song by Soosan Firooz, Afghanistan's first female rapper. Here's how it starts. You tell me you have consciousness, that I am a woman and should remain imprisoned. Well, if you are a man, try being a woman in Afghanistan. Soosan was born in Afghanistan in 1989. Over the next few years, different groups fought to gain control of the country. The official government finally fell apart in 1992. The Taliban, a religious extremist group based in neighboring Pakistan, swept across the border and seized a huge chunk of Afghanistan. The Taliban used torture and murder to enforce their extremist interpretation of the Muslim religion. They said that women were the property of men and should not even speak with men outside their family. Afghan groups sprung up to fight the Taliban and take back their land. Soosan and her family lived in Kandahar, in the Taliban half of the country. Bombs and bullets filled the streets. Soosan's family tried to avoid the fighting, but the situation grew worse. They realized they needed to leave their home. However, Soosan's father was a low-level civil servant, and her mother was a housewife who had never learned to read. They did not have the money to buy plane tickets to another country. Instead, like hundreds of thousands of other Afghans, they fled on foot, first to Pakistan and then to Iran. I became the dirty Afghan, Soosan said. She wasn't alone. All the refugees were seen as second-class citizens. Her dad and other Afghan adults had a hard time getting work. Schools in Iran didn't want to educate refugee kids from Afghanistan. Every time Soosan tried to register for classes, there seemed to be some sort of snag. Schools told her she didn't have the right papers. The school had no space, or they weren't sure which grade she should be in. Instead of going to school, Soosan spent hours waiting in long lines for bread. But as soon as she would get close to the front of the line, Iranians in the line would shove her to the back. The refugee camp was even more dangerous, especially for girls. It was easy to lose hope. On September 11, 2001, when Soosan was 12 years old, terrorists hijacked airplanes and flew them into the World Trade Center towers, and the Pentagon in the United States. A fourth plane crashed into a field. The terrorist who planned the attack hid in Afghanistan. The Taliban refused to hand him over to the United States, so the United States invaded Afghanistan. Soon after, Afghanistan had a new government backed by the United States, and Afghanistan's cities went back to being sort of safe, or at least safer than the refugee camps. In 2003, Soosan's family returned to Kandahar, where Soosan, now a teenager, took a job in a factory weaving carpets. Soosan was like her country. She wore a mask of obedience, but below the surface was anger, discontent, and pain born of war. Refugee camps, and working as a teenager in a factory. This is when Soosan began rapping. If rap singing is a way to tell your miseries, Afghans have a lot to say. That's why I chose to be a rapper, she said. Being a rapper doesn't sound so hard, right? Write some rhymes, use your computer to add a sick beat, make a video with your phone, upload the video online. Easy. For Soosan, it hadn't been so easy. In conservative Afghan society, girls don't rap. Instead, they are expected to marry young and raise a family. Many people do not like that Soosan did not follow this path. She started to receive death threats. I always receive phone calls from unknown men who say I'm a bad girl and they will kill me, she said. But she didn't stop making music. I'm not deterred, Soosan said. Somebody had to start this. I did, and I don't regret it, and I will continue. I want to be the voice of women in my country. In her song, Nakisulakil, she says, when I raise my voice, you can cut my tongue. Get lost. You did not create me. I mend your torn clothing. Day and night I take care of you, and finally my sorrows set me on fire. On stage, instead of wearing the full body covering of the abaya, like many Afghan women do, Soosan Firooz defiantly wears jeans, a sweatshirt, and a skull bandana. She may be rapping about her own life, but she sings the story of many women in her country. For Soosan, rather than letting a life of hardship and intimidation force her into a song of fear, hers is a story of empowerment, defiance, and the right of women to be treated with respect. In your notebook, go ahead and turn to a clean page in Read Aloud and Vocabulary. Title it Real Kids, Real Challenges. The title is Mic Drop. Soosan Firooz, Afghanistan. Your first question, what was Soosan's challenge? Second, what is something you learned and did she inspire you? If she did, tell me how she inspired you. If she did not inspire you, just tell me something that you learned or a fact or something that surprised you. You are going to have another writing assignment over this book with the kids that we read about.